appendicitis attack last night, and so she's there. I think the Ham family is trying their best to be nearby, and I want to pray for her. David Bailey is at the emergency room right now as well with a reaction of some sort to the smoke. I know that John and Crystal Blanton have asked us to pray for Crystal's sister, or it might be her brother's wife. I'm not positive, but she is pregnant and having major complications all of a sudden, including hemorrhaging. So we want to be praying for her. Stephanie threw out her bath yesterday, and we had a party last night. By the time we got done, she may be done for a day or two. So pray for Stephanie. That's going to be really irritating to her. She doesn't like sitting still very long. We're praying again for Brooke's dad, who has done a second trip to Oregon in hopes of kidney replacements, and sent back home again with the same old kidneys, right? So but Danny told me that you're not discouraged, that it's just part of the process. So praying for them, and of course we're praying for the McGowan and the Langdon families as well, who I think Gary and Margot are still in Denver. I'm almost positive everybody here knows that Gary and Margot's son Nick was killed last Sunday night in a motorcycle accident, and they've been dealing with that all week, and that just the difficulty of dealing with that is just amazing. So I also was guaranteed that we were going to need to do birthday wishes for Luke Markakis today, but they're not here either. So he turned 5 though, which is amazing. I don't know why. I have Luke chalked up as permanently 2, and he's 5 now. So all of that stuff is going on. Maybe even some more things. I feel like maybe I've forgotten 1 or 2, but be in a general sense of prayer for all that's happening with our family and friends that aren't here with us today. I know we've got several people. I already had some hellos on Facebook this morning during the music time, and some good to see yous, even though they're not here. A lot of our family and friends are still being very careful, and we're just going to keep saying it until you feel good about being out and about, being in church. Take your time coming back. When all this started, I remember at the beginning, my first worry at the very beginning when they said no big groups in the church, and I think we went for about 11 weeks without actually having services in the building. And my big fear then was that just the normal business of the church would suffer. That we've got budget things that, just because we're not meeting doesn't mean we're not paying mortgage and things like that. And I just kept getting letters, and there'd be a check in them. And I remember at the beginning, I was so appreciative of the fact that everybody was remembering to do that. And I still am. But I don't receive the letters with the same attitude that I did at the beginning. At the beginning, I was just like, I can't believe they remembered to send a check. And we put it in the box. And now I'm like, I can't believe they're not going to be here again this week. And I really have even, it's just a reality of what's going on. But I think I'm getting tired of COVID. I really do. I think I really feel like fellowship is suffering in so many different ways. And I'm glad to hear, I know that some of you are getting together kind of family by family and things like that. Keep doing that. Keep supporting each other. We're still going through Proverbs, and today I'm going to cover something that probably the key to it is integrity. In fact, I left kind of the first slide up for a little bit. Integrity it's a word that's got the same root as integer. Integer means 1. It's literally a whole number. And I thought it was kind of interesting that there's literally 5 ones in the scripture address that I'm using today. For people that see God in every single thing, well, it's right there today. It's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And when we're talking about integrity, that's awesome. I probably could have verses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and it would have ruined the imagery. But I think it's kind of cool, and it's just for fun. I'm not telling you that God has any real good plan for this. But what I want to do today is a little different than what I've done thus far as we've been going through Proverbs. I've been kind of sticking with a couple of themes and just kind of pulling individual verses from everywhere. One of the things that I think I want you to understand about the structural arrangement of Proverbs is the first 10 chapters of Proverbs are written in such a way that each chapter kind of has a theme or a story to it. And it looks like one proverb after another, the same as in all the books of Proverbs, but really there's a theme or a story to it. And then once it hits chapter 10, it begins to go into much more topical expression. And there's a place there at chapter 10 in your Bible, it's just going to say the Proverbs of Solomon, probably. Many of your Bibles will say that. And even though you've known that they've been there the whole time, it's all of a sudden from there it just starts on these smaller thematic ideas. And so it's easy if you were to preach through Proverbs and cover the first 10 chapters, you'd kind of get those easy stories. Once you got to actually chapter 10, you're going to start to see, rather than chapters being complete ideas, it's probably more like paragraphs. And what I'm doing today is swiping an idea that comes out of chapter 11. And so I want to go just in order. And I've not made, originally I was kind of thinking I want to make, like 3 good points and sum them up. And I kind of had a way that I thought I could put this together. But what I decided to do is I'm just going to take each of the verses in order and talk about these for just a moment. And let's just work through it together and see if we find anything that's helpful to us. So Proverbs 11, chapter 1, one of my favorite of all Proverbs. We used this the other day. The Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him. I think I was mentioning to you all that when I sold fruit, one of the things I had to do was take my nearly 100-year-old grocer scales that I got from my grandfather's store on the eastern slope, and it's actually everyone that saw them are just like, those are so cool. Everybody else has these digital things, and I have these scales with a big clock face that's like this big hanging off the corner of my trailer, and underneath it had a big huge basket. And this fellow came in, and he would come in once a year, and happy birthday, Luke. Right? You're welcome. 5, right? That's good. Hey, Miss Pam's downstairs too if you want to go down there. You don't have to, but she is down there. So I'd have those scales, and I would, so every time I see him, he's like, hello, Pastor Darren, how are you doing? He's just like really my buddy these days, so I'm going to enjoy it. But I had these scales, and this man would come, and he was appointed by the state, and he had this magic box of weights, and he would put them in my scales, and I had to show the exact weight that he had put in my scales. And he'd get like 11 pounds, 2.5 ounces in there, and my scales needed to show 11, 2.5. And then he would certify them and put this little label on there, and everything was good. And honest scales are the key to commerce. If you've heard about people talk about maybe they have their thumb on the scales, they'll do that. You'll see other scales. Mine was just one thing weighted, and so it was on one hand it had the basket, and then on the other hand it had the number that would show what was in the basket. But a lot of scales, like if you were measuring gold dust back in the day, it would be a pair of baskets on each side of a scale. And what they would do is they would put like the gold dust in one side, and they would start putting the same little weighted measures that in the other side that would balance it out. And then he would add it up and go, oh, you got 2 ounces and 2 1/3 ounces of gold dust in here, and that's how you knew what you had. But if the guy had his scales and maybe he had a hole drilled up in in the middle of them and it was empty, or if it worked better the other way, it filled that up with lead. And so it said 2 ounces on the thing, but really it weighed 1.5 ounces, and he could lie, he could rip people off. And this proverb begins with this. This idea of integrity begins with, the Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights find favor with him. And this is really talking about fairness. It's talking about honesty. I get so frustrated with this when I look at the things people are arguing about these days. I get frustrated with it on both sides. You see what the conservatives are doing all of a sudden. The people that don't want to wear a mask are quite often the same people that are like trying to stop abortion. They don't want abortion to happen. And so you'll have somebody for years and years who have made the general argument that it's my body, it's my choice. And so these people are like, but it's not your body, it's the baby's body. But that's their argument, my body, my choice. Now people are they're like doing this, going in without a mask on, and they're just throwing this out, my body, my choice. And it's like, you hated that argument when the other guy was using it, and now you just like literally even take the wrong argument and throw it back in their face. I mentioned last week about a conversation I got, and I was trying to point out the dishonest scales that the person was working with. And her argument was she hated with all of her heart and all of her being and everything she could possibly bring into existence anyone who supported Donald Trump because he's hateful. And so, did you see the dishonesty in the scales? It's like on one hand, she wants to measure hatred as bad, and on the other hand, she wants to measure it as good. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me, and it doesn't work for the people that you listen to. It doesn't work for the people that are close to you. It doesn't work for your friends. There's a question I would bring with this that I ask a lot of times when I'm doing counseling with people. I ask people a lot of times, where's your dignity? And the reason I ask that question is because the person that they are partnered with has dishonest scales. They're like, they flip back and forth, and they just lie about the one side, and they tell falsehoods about the other, and they're just like, they don't care about truth. And they come into a relationship together, and you try to deal with what's going on in the relationship, but the one partner is just completely operating with dishonest scales. And I ask the other person, where is your dignity? I've also asked the person that's lying all the time, the person that uses the dishonest scales, where's your dignity? Why would you do this? And knowing full well that you're using dishonest scales. Person of integrity will not use dishonest scales. Verse 2 says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom. Some of your versions might even say before when pride comes, then there's the fall. You fall from humility. This is talking about, this verse distinguishes between pride and humility. There's something interesting about the proud. What the proud fear, which is really, it's shame in the end. Whatever you're proud of, your greatest fear is going to be the shame that's brought from the opposite of this, or not having it. But what they fear and what they cultivate are the exact same thing. And I think that this is an important thing for us to consider. In my life and in the lives of people that I've listened to, if I'm proud, I will cultivate and fear the same thing. I don't want to be found out to be lacking in wisdom, because I'm sort of big on, well, I know the answers to things. It's happened to me in a huge bad way this week, where I'm like, I never want to be the dummy. I never want to be the idiot. And I'm going off in my boastful, proud, arrogant, I know what you need to hear ways. And all of a sudden I'm like, I just realized that what I have done is really, really harm a person that was in the room, that was innocent of what's going on. And my greatest fear is to be found out that way. And I'm literally sick to my stomach. For 3 days I've been sick now for the mistake that I made. But because I'm doing it, it literally cultivated the possibility of it happening. I planted the seed and I watered it, and it grew to bloom. I want to challenge you, not only on the people that you listen to, but on the ways that you deal with people. Do you ever think about the fact that your fears might reveal your own pride? I would challenge you to do that. I would challenge you to think about what you fear the most, and then look and see how it could possibly reveal where you're proud. I think it'll help you to be a person of integrity. Verse 11, chapter 11, verse 3. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. Duplicity is two-facedness. It's the idea that for one person I'm one thing, for another person I'm a little bit different. For some of us, this is like totally obvious, and it's so easy to see. It's just like we're pretending, and it's most people know that there's pretending going on. But other times it's more difficult to see. Sometimes the people that are advising you, the people that are close to you, the people that love you, have a bit of two-facedness to them. And this, I think, is part of the dishonest scales. I think they'll look at their own life, they'll look at their own reflection in the mirror, and they don't see the speck in their eye. And then when they look at you and begin to talk about you, they see very, very, very clearly what's going on in your life that makes God unhappy. And they'll tell you about it. I would rather be the victim of somebody that treats me that way than to be the person who's treating others that way. But I think the two-faced part is an important thing to remember with integrity. And integrity works both ways. Who has a dishonest scale? Sometimes I have my thumb on the scale, but a lot of times I'm really willing to deal with people that have their thumb on the scale in my life. And the question I kind of bring up from this verse is, do I have friends that are difficult to trust? And if I do, there's something that I want to do with that. I may want to encourage them to a degree and see if I can help them, but I got to tell you, their friendship kind of comes at three different levels. And Paul, Timothy, and Barnabas are an easy way to kind of think about how these levels come. If you look at Paul and Timothy, Paul's relationship with Timothy was one of authority to somebody that he was teaching, somebody that was not really exactly on his level. And the same thing for Timothy, he looked up to Paul. And so his relationship, there was one relationship, but in Paul's case, he's like the teacher. In Timothy's case, he's the student. And you have relationships like that. I have all sorts of relationships where I have people that come to me and they're looking for advice. Some of them are well-established relationships, and one of them happened last night. I'd never met the guy, but I ended up spending an hour talking to a guy last night, and I was like Paul to him, and he was Timothy, and it was okay because I have people in my life that, when I meet them, I'm Timothy and they're Paul, and I know it, and they know it, and I'm like, I'd really like to hear what you have to say about this. And the third kind of relationship is like Barnabas and Paul. They're not peers. They kind of have it going back and forth. The idea here is that you have people in your life that you are teaching, and you have people in your life that you are friends with that are at a peer level. Don't be duplicitous to them at all, ever. Don't be two-faced. Be honest. Be open about who you are. Let your faults be seen, and be transparent. But you're in a relationship where you're the Timothy, and Paul and Barnabas are kind of above you, and you may not be exactly like perfect friends with them or peer friends, but friendly, but you're listening to them as advisors. I want to tell you this. If you find that you have trouble trusting the authorities in your life, I want you to be really careful about how much more you give them of your heart and your mind and your soul, because it's dangerous. When you're giving something like that to a two-faced person, you don't know who you're giving it to. You might be giving it to the good, you might be giving it to the bad, and it just depends on what goes on and how they're going to use that against you. So my question there is, do I have friends that are hard to trust? If I do, I want to be careful. I do want to say, too, that just because they make a mistake, I think this week I made a terrible, terrible mistake. Kind of honest in its start, but it was just so arrogant what I did. I'm talking about the same thing I just talked about. Part of the way that I hope I remove two-facedness from myself, because on one hand, if I just walk away from that smiling and all that was dumb and don't do anything else about it, there's hypocrisy in that. But I apologized at the time. I have confessed it to multiple other people. I've now confessed it to you all. And I'm not going to give you the details because the details would be hurtful. But I blew it. And part of this is, like, I think you can trust people better when you know they're willing to admit to their shortcomings. That's not two-faced. That's you made a mistake. That's you did something wrong, and that is you held yourself to the same accountability, the same scales that you would anticipate another person holding themselves to would make you feel good about them. So all of this stuff kind of works together. Verse 4 says this. It talks about wealth and righteousness. Wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. There was the richest cardinal in Catholic Church history. Was considered to be a cardinal from several hundred years ago named Henry Beaufort. And he was incredibly wealthy, probably bought his position to a degree. I'm not going to blame the Catholic Church for anything that happened 400 years ago. But when he died, he was one of the wealthiest men in the world. And he died of kind of a lingering illness. And the last month and a half of his life, I understand, was just pure torture for anybody that was around him. Because all he did was cry and scream and wail about the fact that he had all the wealth, more than anybody in the world, and he was unable to buy his health. He was unable to delay his death. And he's just like, how can you do that? And he thought it was incredibly unfair, but it's not unfair. It's the way of the world. Wealth is worthless in the day of your death, in the day of wrath. But righteousness delivers from death. And I think the question that we have here regarding integrity is, where am I storing my treasures? Am I storing up treasures in heaven, or am I storing up treasures on earth? And it's really important that you guys recognize that in your life, that I recognize it in mine. Verse 5 says, the righteousness of the blameless makes their path straight, but the wicked are brought down by their own wickedness. This is about the blamed and the blameless. We find ourselves a lot of times being treated unfairly. There's just no doubt about this. We have probably all, at some point in our lives, been blamed or accused of something that we really haven't done. Sometimes we're misunderstood. Sometimes it's just a flat-out lie. Sometimes it's just somebody wanting to kind of assert themselves over us and to make us feel some pain. And there's a lot of times probably in our lives when maybe we have had the tendency or the desire or the possibility of literally blaming or accusing others. I want us, if we're going to be people of integrity, to be really careful about just attacking other people. Assuming and blaming is it's not a good course usually at any level. But if you find yourself on the side where you're being blamed a lot, remember this. People fall. The righteous fall. It happens. The righteous can be walking along, and all of a sudden, it's just a lie, a subterfuge. Somebody wants us to fall, and they can make us fall, and they'll tell a story, and other people believe it, and it's just next thing you know, you're on the outs, and the righteous will fall. The wicked will fall too. The Bible kind of promises that in the end, the wicked are going to pay the price for their success here. And even if they win the battle of popularity, even if they get money because of what they've done to you. I was talking to somebody recently who had to go through the experience of being conned, scammed by somebody, and lost thousands of dollars that they couldn't afford to lose. And it's like, it's so frustrating. In fact, I've heard there was a case the other day. You've heard about people stealing, digitally stealing mortgages that like somebody thinks their house is paid off and all of a sudden they're being repossessed. And you've heard about that. Well, a man who lost his home to a con like that found the guy who did it. And he killed the man's family in front of him. And then he made him think that he was going to live for a while. And then he killed him too, and then he killed himself. And that guy, that con artist who was just stealing homes because he found a loophole in the digital world, he fell. He paid a price. I don't know that it was that other man's job to sentence him to death. God would have got him in the end anyway. But the wicked are going to fall. Here's the deal. When the righteous fall and the wicked fall, God will rescue the falling righteous. He will get you before you're crushed. He's going to take care of you at some point. God does not even have to intervene in the fall of the wicked. The fall of the wicked are getting what comes naturally to them. And so a person of integrity is going to be saved that way. Do you struggle with the unfairness and the success of the evil in the world, of those people that just get away with things? Do you spend time in your day being frustrated about it's just not fair? This doesn't seem fair. I want to challenge you, let it go. God's got it. Verse 6 says this, the righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the unfaithful are trapped by evil desires. And so this verse talks about good and bad desires. Right desires are rewarded. Bad desires are penalized. Have you ever thought about it that way? When you think about what God wants to do in your life, the good desires in your life are rewarded. The bad desires are eventually penalized. The bad desires come with consequences. I think the good desires come with consequences as well, but they're good consequences. They're better results. And I think it's important for us to recognize that we need to desire the right thing. Psalm 37:4, I think, says, delight yourself in the Lord. He will give you the desires of your heart. And we always try to clarify around here that doesn't mean he'll give you what you desire, because you might currently desire something bad. You might desire something harmful. If you just think that it means that God's going to give you what you want, you're way off base there. But if you delight yourself in him, if you seek righteousness in your own life and say, here are my desires right now, either provide them for me like you promised, or change them and give you permission to give me a new desire. Give me the desire of my heart. Don't give me what my heart desires. Put the desire into my heart. You're on the right track. God works with you that way. There's a questionnaire. What are the things you're wishing for? Just what do you wish? What do you wish? And sometimes I think Blythe is starting to develop this as a lead counseling question, and I kind of like it. Blythe will just ask people, "What do you wish they would say, or what do you wish that would happen?" And it's a good thing for us to think about this, because what I wish for it reveals my desires, and then you can kind of wash that through a little bit of scripture and say that, hey, the thing I'm wishing for is, in the end, it's nothing but my own happiness, and I can see that, or it's nothing but my own comfort, and I can see that. And I don't know that's necessarily. I think there's like a line of desires, and maybe in the middle, it's good on one side and bad on the other. And some of your desires may be closer to the middle than others. It's a little bad or it's a little good. Some of the things you desire are really bad or really good. And what are the things you wish for? And if you sort through them and look at the root of it, I think the question there becomes: I'm really desiring God and godly things? Am I desiring righteousness? Or am I desiring something that's self, that is my own thing? And I think that's where the dividing line is there. And a person of integrity is going to stay on the side of desiring the things of God. Verse 7 says this: hopes placed in mortals die with them. The promise of their power comes to nothing. Who do you hope in? You hope in people, including yourself, your friends, famous people. You know what? I was talking to Dave a minute before church started, and I don't know if Dave's an agitator or not. He might be my friend. I'm not sure. But he goes, how about them Rockies? I'm like, any other point of the year, I love the Rockies, but they've lost like 11 out of 13 games. And I'm like, I don't know if I like them that much anymore. And I was telling Dave that when baseball started again, I was like, baseball's back. I don't care if they lose every game. It's baseball. I'm going to be really happy. Then they started winning. And they were like the best team in the majors. And then like, in one day it changed. They went from the best to the worst. And I'm like, I get frustrated and I start to carry that. Last night, I was watching the game on my phone when we had our buddy over. And at ninth inning, it's a tie score on one pitch. And guy for the other team hits a home run and we lose. And I'm like, one pitch. And Steph is like, there it is. And we're back to 2019. Darren left 2020 behind and it's gone backwards. And it's like, I even put my hope in football teams and baseball teams. You know what I mean? Can't be happy if they're not succeeding. I can't be happy if things, why do you put your hope in? Do you put it in people at any level, including myself? Or do I put my hope in God? This whole thing, Proverbs 3, 5 through 7, is probably to me the key of all of the Proverbs. And it's lean not on your own understanding. Don't trust in yourself, but trust in God. And so, who do you put your hope in? Do you actually get yourself in a position where people put their hope in you? Because that could be dangerous too. I've shared before about the woman that I had counseling with, this was before we even started the church, years and years ago. And she came into the office and all she did was tell me about how fantastic her husband was. He's the greatest guy ever. And I was like, I know I'm supposed to be doing some marriage thing here. And I said, what's the problem? And the problem was he had died a month before. And her entire hope, everything she knew, her existence was in him. And it's great that he was such a good person, but we can't put our hopes in anybody else because the mortals that we love and that we trust, even if they don't let us down, will die. That's what I've always told people. I remember one time years and years ago, they're like, who's your heroes? And it was a church question, and I did a sermon built around my 5 heroes that I chose at the time. And I wonder if I still have them. It was C.S. Lewis. It was Joshua Chamberlain. It was Eric Liddell. It was Bonhoeffer and maybe Augustine. I'm not sure. But the thing they all had in common is they were all dead. There was no way it was going to be LeBron James because who knows what he's going to say tomorrow. There's no way it's going to be anybody that's alive because who knows. There's no way I'm going to make Donald Trump my hero. He's got Twitter, and there's just no way it's going to happen. And so you just got to be careful with how much hope you put into other people and your friends. Boy, if your friends ever let you down, you've counted on them, and all of a sudden they let you down. I had this experience in 1985, Christmas time of 1985, where all of a sudden a large group of my friends went in a different direction than I was moving. And not only that I was moving, but I was trying to lead them. And it just changed my world. And it was so devastating to me. And one of the best things I learned through that, it took me 3 months, but one of the best things I learned through that is never, ever, ever lift my friends up on a pedestal where my hopes are really built on their performance. It's too much for anybody to carry. It's too much for your husband, your wife to carry. It's too much for your best friend to carry. Don't put your hopes in people. Put your trust in God. The question I have here is just how sad are you when people let you down? How sad do you get when people let you down? And I'm sad when people let me down. I'm really, really sad when I let other people down. For some reason, that's harder on me than the other way. I know what it is to feel that. And my question is, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be sad, but what I'm saying is how much of this is your whole life? When people let you down, you need to be able to go, you know what? God is going to lift me up. My hope wasn't in them ever to begin with. The promise of their power literally comes to nothing, but the righteousness that comes with God is going to carry me through. Verse 8, and here's where we restart. Verse 8 says this, the righteous person is rescued from trouble, but it falls on the wicked instead. I've got those little carrots up there. They're serving as arrows. All I want you to do with that is they're surrounding the word trouble, you see. And all I want you to do with that is think about this. The righteous run from trouble. The wicked run to it. Which one of those sides are you on? Now, I don't mean danger. I mean trouble. I mean like moral trouble. I mean the idea that somebody starts talking about one of your friends, the righteous person's going to do their best to put an end to that. Maybe defend the other person. Just stop it. Not get in the recipe of what the trouble is about. The unrighteous are going to say, hey, here's a great opportunity for me to get some drama going in my life and to get some more drama. Think about it. Think about the Red Sea for a minute when Egypt was let the Israelites go and then decided they didn't want to do that after all. The Red Sea was trouble. When you look at what was happening with the Egyptians and the Israelites at that point were running from trouble. The Egyptians are running towards it. And it was the same spot in the world. But God delivered them, the Israelites, from their trouble. But the Red Sea killed the army of Egypt. So think about that. Question, do I thrive on trouble? Do I love drama? Is this stuff kind of fun for me? Or do I do my best to kind of live a life of peace? I had a conversation this week, and I was like thinking about sometimes when we're younger, and sometimes when our adrenaline is more important to us than it is when we get a little bit older. How much do we really, really desire a peaceful life? I don't know how much we do, especially when we're young. Heaven's not that appealing to young people. It's like, yes, no problems at all. And we're like, well, what do you do? And older folks are like, well, I'm a victim of all these problems now, so I would be happier without troubles. But I want you to think about that. Do I thrive on trouble or drama? Do I like it? And if you do, pay attention to God's words here. Verse 9. With their mouths, the godless destroy their neighbors, but through knowledge, the righteous escape. What I want you to think about here is how you listen to other people, how you speak to other people. God's words always build up. It will always make you feel better. When you're confronted by a fellow Christian and they're talking to you about failure in your life or something, I want to tell you this immediately. If what they're doing at that moment is destroying you, just end the conversation and say, I can't do this. You're not an authority over me if you're just going to tear me down. God's words build up. Evil words destroy. Evil words crush. Evil words are harmful. The iron of a friend sharpens your sword of iron as well. It's not to say that somebody else isn't going to tell you something very difficult, but those difficult words should be building you up. And if they're not, just avoid that stuff. Get away from it the very best you can. I think we've kind of always seen this. I remember a college girl we had, that Kim Ridgely. She was one of the, I think she was Smith before she was Ridgely, right? Kim? Yeah. I don't even remember her maiden name. But when Kim was a college student, she was just like perfect. I was like, I better not try to help her to be a better Christian because I'm only going to make her worse. And I was just like, let her work and let her do her thing. And she was such a blessing to our entire ministry. And one of the reasons that Kim was a blessing, she's the one that started Safe Rides for students. And one of the reasons that she was a blessing is she would say it this way. She goes, I just want to speak possibility into people's lives. I want to speak hope into their lives because I think most of them hear the opposite. And one of them, I go, where did they hear the opposite? She goes, their parents in church. And I'm like, oh, I think you're right. and she just was always looking to speak hope and possibility into their lives. And she'd find somebody that was depressed about something, and instead of kind of condemning them for their own fault in the depression, which is like my favorite thing to do, Kim would start talking about what your life could be if this thing wasn't a part of your life. And she started talking about, the small step you could take to make it not a part of your life. And she was just brilliant at that. She was so good at it. I wish we could all be that way. God's word builds up. Am I building others up? Or am I destroying them? Are others building me up, or are they destroying me? Pay attention to who you're being and who you're being with. Verse 10, there's a reward coming. When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. When the wicked perish, there are shouts of joy. When's the key word? It might take a while for the righteous to prosper. It really might. Sometimes I think the righteous work and work and work and do and do and do and be, and the bad just keeps on coming, it seems like. But there's a point. The righteous will prosper. And when it happens, the city's going to rejoice. When the wicked perish, there's going to be shouts of joy. Remember when we killed bin Laden? It's like, doesn't seem like something. When we killed, we shouldn't be celebrating right at that point, but then go, oh, bin Laden, yeah, that was good. And people rejoiced when that happened. They literally rejoiced. There were parades around the world. Countries that aren't fans of America were carrying American flags in their parades when that happened. And when the righteous, when the reward comes, the evil are going to be revealed for who they are. That's going to happen. Question here is, can I wait? Do I need to see the victory today, or can I wait? Can I recognize always that God, his promises are true, and we just need to wait? Christians that you respect the most throughout history, the ones that bring tears to your eyes when you hear their stories, are the ones who persevered, and they never gave up on God. Those Old Testament stories that I like the best, Jonathan facing the army and going, perhaps God will deliver us. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego saying, God can deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we will not bow to you. Those stories are the stories that inspire us, and they're the stories of people of integrity. I want you to be that person. Finally, verse 11, you make a difference. Through the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it's destroyed. The righteousness are going to bring exaltation to the community, to the city, to the world around them. The wicked are going to bring destruction. That's just the way it is. And you make a difference. Every single one of us in this room, by our righteousness, are lifting up the world. We're lifting up our community. We're lifting up our neighborhood. We're lifting up our friends and our families. And you make a difference. I want every one of you to pay attention to that. So the question here is, who do I lead and where do I lead them? Who's leading me and where are they leading me? I've always told people, I've told everyone that, you're a leader. Because I have college students that oftentimes are like, I'm not a leader in the student ministry. I've had church members and family and friends that are like, I'm not a leader in the church. And I'm like, absolutely, you're a leader. Everybody is a leader. The question is, who are you leading and where are you leading them to? Many of you are leading your children. Some of you are leading a neighbor. Last night it was fun. Last night we have game night, which is like for the most select of all the people in our life. They get to be at our house and play nurse, and eat food that we probably shouldn't be eating. And we have this once in a while. And last night, I know Steph manipulated it. She has a friend from her gym group that needs something. And he had to drop something off during game night. And she drags him in, and then he's eating dinner with us, and then all of a sudden he's playing nerds with us. And it was great, and it was fun. And you know what? She's got people in her life out there that don't go to this church, and she's leading them, and she's leading them somewhere. And even when he left, she's like debriefing with everybody in the whole group about, You see what's going on with him. You know what we got to try to do, right? And now she's leading the group towards how do we help this guy? How do we make a difference in his life? And probably her best advice would have been, he just talked to Darren for an hour. We got to do that different next time. I think that's what she would probably say. But you all are leading somebody. You have a sphere of influence around you that some of them you just go, that's just my friends. You're leading them. You're leading them by your words and by your actions, by your behavior. Who's leading you and where are they leading you to? I want you to think about that as well. It's all important. All this stuff is about integrity. And I want to close with this invitation that would probably go this way. I barely talked about Jesus today, but what I would want to close with is this. Follow the greatest example of integrity that you know. We talked about honest skills. We talked about duplicity. We talked about there's some contrast in here, the blamed and the blameless, and so forth. And all of these things kind of add up to it. You can't be righteous and unrighteous both. You can't be the blamed and the blameless all at the same time. It's really hard to be all that. Jesus was undivided. He was undivided in his loyalty. He was undivided by sin. He's undivided, even though he stands between the Father on one side and us on the other. He's undivided even that way because he and the Father both have the exact same goal in mind for each and every one of us, that we would have eternal life. And as we look at the Old Testament and think about wisdom, my invitation to you as I close with the word of prayer is simply that we would choose to follow the undivided, the Christ that is full of integrity. Father God, thank you for these verses. Lord, I'll confess to anyone that's here this morning that I didn't have a sermon until I came into church this morning. I kept thinking I had something and I never did. And Lord, this is going to show one of two things. It's either going to show that I should prepare